Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Moss and welcome back to our tutorial series on Jenkins. In the last video, I introduced you to Jenkins pipelines, which are a key feature of Jenkins. And now we're going to take the knowledge that we've learned over the previous videos and put it to use for the next topic. In this video, I'll show you how to do cross-browser testing with the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly go over the prerequisites. The first is that you'll need a LambdaTest account. Secondly, you'll need Python 3 installed on the Jenkins server. And finally, you'll also need to install the Python Selenium Webdriver module. I'd also like to give a quick overview of the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin. The LambdaTest plugin adds additional features to Jenkins jobs, such as embedding test results in the Jenkins build. You can also configure your LambdaTest credentials for your Jenkins jobs. And the tunnel also provides automatic setup of the LambdaTest tunnel binary file, which is required if you intend on testing locally hosted sites. Now that we have a high-level understanding of the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is walk you through the code base that we're going to be testing in Jenkins. And I'm currently inside the GitHub repository, and the repo is called sample to do app. And this is basically a very simple web application, and it only has the index.html file here, and the web application is actually hosted using a feature of GitHub called GitHub Pages. So if you're not familiar with GitHub Pages, it basically allows you to use GitHub to host a web page from a GitHub repository. And to navigate to the page where this code base is hosted, I can navigate to settings in the repository. And if I scroll down to the pages section and select pages, under the GitHub pages section, you'll see your site is published at this URL. So if I go ahead and open up this URL, I should see my application, and it's the LambdaTest sample application, and it's just a to-do list with a few items already filled out. But if I wanted to add additional items to the to-do list, I can just fill it out here and then select add. And I can also mark items as completed using the check boxes as well. Now, in order to test this web application, I've written a very simple Python Selenium script. And if we navigate back to the code base, we can take a look at that script. It's called test sample to do app.py. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and we'll quickly walk through this code. And the first thing that we do after importing our modules is define the URL for our remote WebDriver. And we get the URL from an environment variable that's predefined called LT hub URL, which is short for the LambdaTest hub URL. And we'll get the value of this URL in a little bit. And after we define the URL, we then define the desired capabilities using a dictionary. And the first capability dictionary key value pair here is the build name. And we actually retrieve the build name from an environment variable that is used by the LambdaTest plugin, or rather it's defined by the LambdaTest plugin. So this is the LambdaTest build name environment variable. And also notice that we set tunnel to be true because we are going to use the LambdaTest tunnel binary file. And the LambdaTest tunnel opens a connection from my computer to the LambdaTest platform, and it allows the LambdaTest platform to connect to a locally hosted site on my computer. So after we specify the desired capabilities, we then instantiate a remote driver using the desired capabilities as well as the URL, which is the LambdaTest hub URL. And after we instantiate the driver, we can then make a request to localhost. And here we're making a request to localhost on port 8081, which is where we're going to run our sample to do app when it's running inside of a Jenkins job. After we connect to localhost, the driver finds an element by name, line item 3, and it clicks that line item. So it should select the third item checkbox here. And After it selects that checkbox, we then get a reference to the text box directly below. So we'll get a reference to this field here. And then we send the keys testing in that field, and then we select the add button. So we should get something like this, right? And I'll add that to the to-do list. And then we assert that no results found is not in the page source. And directly after that, we use a very useful command here. We execute script and then LambdaTest status equals passed. And this will actually update the status of the tests inside of the LambdaTest dashboard to passed. So this is a very useful script here. And then directly after that, we quit the driver. Okay, so now that we've walked through the code base and the test script, let's navigate to Jenkins, and we're going to install the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin on our Jenkins instance. So I'll open up Jenkins here, and then from Jenkins, I'm going to select Manage Jenkins, and then I'm going to go to Manage Plugins. I'll select the Available tab, and then I'm going to select, I'll type in LambdaTest. And the first plugin listed here, LambdaTest Automation, is the plugin that we want to install. So I'm going to go ahead and check it, and then select Download Now and Install after restart. Okay, so it's pending, and then I'll just check the box, restart Jenkins. Okay, so the plugin should be installed, and now I'm going to add my LambdaTest credentials to Jenkins. So I'm going to select Manage Jenkins, and I'm going to scroll down to Manage Credentials, and I'll select the global credentials, and I'm going to select Add Credentials. And from here, the LambdaTest plugin added a new kind of credential. So if I open this drop down here, you'll see LambdaTest credentials. And I'll leave the scope as global. And then the username, my username is techwithmoss@gmail.com. And then the access token I can retrieve from my LambdaTest profile. So if I navigate to LambdaTest, and then I can very quickly access the key if I just select Configure Tunnel here. And then the key is the option here, the key option right here. So this value is the key that I would need to copy into Jenkins. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and paste that in. And we'll call it LambdaTest credentials. And then if I select Verify Credentials, it says successful authentication. Okay, so let's go ahead and select OK and add those credentials. Now remember that our test script references an environment variable called LT hub URL, which is the LambdaTest hub URL. And this environment variable still needs to be set. So let's go ahead and set that environment variable in Jenkins. So if I navigate back to the dashboard and then Manage Jenkins, and then scroll down and select Configure System, I'm going to scroll down to Global Properties, and I have environment variables checked, and I'll select Add. Okay, and we're going to call it LT hub URL, just like it how it's referenced inside of the Python script. And to get the value of the hub URL, I'm going to navigate back to LambdaTest. And in my LambdaTest account, I'm going to select Configure Tunnel. And down here where it says More Details here, this is a link to documentation. And in the documentation pages, we have a link to the capability generator. Okay. If I select the capability generator, it takes me to a tool where I can automatically generate desired capabilities. This also automatically generates the hub URL that's unique to my account. And if I expand username and access keys, you'll notice down here, hub, this is my hub URL. So if I copy that to the clipboard and then navigate back to Jenkins, I'll paste that into the value field, and that's going to be my hub URL, which my Python script is referencing. And now that we've saved that variable, I'm going to select save. And we're going to create a new Jenkins job. So I'm going to select new item, and I'm going to call it LambdaTest job. And it will be a freestyle project. So I'm going to select freestyle project and then select OK. And the first thing that I want to do is configure source code management. So I'm going to select Git, and then I'm going to navigate back to GitHub, and I'm going to retrieve the repo URL. So remember that it's SSH. So I'm going to copy the SSH URL, and then back in Jenkins, I'm going to paste that URL in, and I'm going to select credentials that I previously configured. Okay. And the branch specifier, I just have the main branch. Okay. And after we've set up source code management, I'm going to scroll down to the build environment, and you'll notice that we now have a new option here called LambdaTest. So I'm going to go ahead and select LambdaTest. And this section is our interface with the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin. If I take a look at the Selenium test section, I can actually add Selenium test capabilities directly in this interface. So if I click add here, I can select an operating system, browser, a version, and the screen resolution as well. And then I can add as many test capabilities as I need here. The one caveat with using this interface to define the capabilities is that we have to reference an environment variable that is created by the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin inside of our Python script. And to find the name of that environment variable that the plugin creates, I'm going to navigate back to the capabilities generator, and I'm going to navigate back to, I'm going to navigate back to the documentation here. And if I scroll down to the section LambdaTest integrations, and then integrations with CI/CD tools, I'll select the Jenkins plugin. And in the Jenkins plugin page, if I scroll down to the environment variable for LambdaTest Jenkins plugin section, it gives me a list of environment variables that the LambdaTest plugin will use. One of those variables is called LT_browsers, and this is an array of combinations of desired capabilities. So you can see here, when that environment variable is printed out to the screen, it prints out the desired capabilities, and these are the capabilities that are defined within the Jenkins job here. Okay, but in order to use these capabilities, we have to reference, when we're defining the capabilities variable in the Python script, we would reference this environment variable. Now I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to use the desired capabilities as they are inside of the Python script, but it's good to know that if you do want to utilize this feature in the interface, you can utilize that environment variable in your script to do so. So I'm going to remove this capability. And the next configuration is use local tunnel. And the local tunnel or the Lambda tunnel binary file is a feature that allows you to test your private server URLs or locally hosted web apps using the LambdaTest cloud servers. And since our web application will be hosted locally on this Jenkins server when we're running this job, we will need to utilize the Lambda tunnel. So I'm going to go ahead and check that box, And then in the next field, we have the tunnel name, which we can leave blank, and it will have it will be given a default name. And we won't make this a shared tunnel, and we're also not going to use the legacy LambdaTest tunnel. But under optional tunnel commands, we are going to utilize one additional option when the plugin starts the LambdaTest tunnel. And that additional option is --info API port, and then the port that this will run on. So what this option will do is it will provide an endpoint. The LambdaTest tunnel will publish an endpoint on port 8000 that we can connect to, and we can perform operations on the tunnel. For instance, we can close the tunnel if we want to, or we can get status, the current status of the tunnel as well. We can also specify a download path for the tunnel, but I'm going to leave this blank, and then I'm going to check use workspace path to download the tunnel into. Okay, and then for the LambdaTest credentials, we already created those credentials, so I'm going to select them here. And then for the last step, as a post-build action, we want the test results embedded. So from the post-build actions dropdown, you'll notice the LambdaTest report. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And this action will generate a LambdaTest report inside of the Jenkins build, and it uses the build name from the environment variable LT build name, which is created by the LambdaTest plugin. So if you remember in the Python script, if I navigate back to the code base and I open up the Python script, where the capabilities are defined in the first key value pair, I set the build key to the value of the environment variable LT build name. Okay, so it pulls the value of the LT build name, and that's how we get the test report generated inside of the Jenkins build. So I'll navigate back to Jenkins, and we're going to add a build step, and we're going to execute shell, and we're going to add a few commands here to start a simple Python server that's basically serving the current directory, the directory of the workspace. Then we'll also shut down that server after invoking the Python script, and we'll also shut down the LambdaTest tunnel using that info API port endpoint. So the first thing that I'm going to do is invoke the sleep command, and I'm going to sleep for 5 seconds. That just gives the tunnel a little bit of time to make a connection. And then after invoking sleep, I'm going to start the Python server. So I'm going to invoke Python 3, and then the module http.server, and we're going to run it on 8081 since this Jenkins server is running on 8080, and then ampersand so that this is a non-blocking shell command. It'll just execute this process in the background, and then we'll invoke Python again, and this time we'll run our Python script. So I'm going to say test sample to do app.py, and once that script is completed, we'll be able to stop the HTTP server that's serving this particular workspace. And to do that, I'm going to use pkill. So pkill and then -f, and this is kind of like a fuzzy match for the name of the process. And we'll put in quotes HTTP server, so that should kill the Python server. After killing the server, I'll invoke sleep again and sleep for 10 seconds before shutting down the LambdaTest tunnel. And to shut down the LambdaTest tunnel, I can curl an endpoint, the info API port endpoint, with the delete method, and then localhost 8000, and then the endpoint is API v.1.0, and then stop. Okay, so this endpoint should shut down the LambdaTest tunnel after the tests have been completed. And that should be all we need, so I'm going to go ahead and save this job. And let's go ahead and build it and see what happens. I'm going to open up the console output. Okay, and we can see that it's sleeping for 5 seconds. It invoked the server as well as the test script. And now it's killed the HTTP server and sleeping for 10 seconds. And then we curled the stop endpoint, and you can see here that status equals success. So it successfully stopped the tunnel. And if we want to check the output of the tests, we can do so by navigating to the LambdaTest dashboard. And from the dashboard, if I navigate to the automation section, I can see in the very top of the list here, Jenkins LambdaTest job started a couple minutes ago. And if I open that up, I can see that the test passed, and I can even watch the output of the test. So if I open this up and maximize it, you can see the test run pretty quickly, but you can see what the test did. So right here, it selects the third item, and then it adds testing as an additional item to the to-do list, and then we quit the driver. So it was a very quick test. And if I navigate back to Jenkins, I'll navigate to the build page. You'll notice at the bottom left section here, the LambdaTest report. If I click on that, I get kind of a high-level overview of the tests, and I can navigate directly to the automation page in LambdaTest by clicking these links, right? So it takes me directly to the build here as well. Okay, so that's how we can utilize the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin inside of a freestyle Jenkins job. But we also want to do this from a Jenkins pipeline. So the next thing that we're going to do is create a Jenkins pipeline, and inside of that pipeline, we're going to invoke the LambdaTest tunnel so that we can connect to the LambdaTest platform and run the tests from a Jenkins pipeline. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the dashboard, and we're going to select new item, and I'm going to call it LambdaTest pipeline, and I'll select pipeline type, and I'm going to select OK. And from the configuration page, I'm going to scroll down to the pipeline section, and I'm going to select pipeline script from SEM because we're going to store the Jenkins file along with the code base. And then for SEM, I'm going to select Git, and then let's copy the URL of the code base again. Okay, I'm going to paste that in and select my credentials. Okay, and then the branch is going to be main. And we'll also leave the Jenkins file in the root directory of the repository. So we'll leave the script path as it is now, and we'll go ahead and start building the pipeline. And I'm going to use the pipeline syntax tool like we did in the previous videos. Okay. And I'm going to open up the declarative directive generator, and we're going to generate some stages. Okay, so I'll scroll down here to the stages directive, and select that one. And then let's go ahead and add a stage. And the first stage that I'm going to create is going to be called setup, and it will contain steps. And then the second stage is going to be called the test stage, and this will also contain steps. Those are going to be the only two stages that we create. And I'll go ahead and select generate directive, and I get the stages generated down here. I'm going to copy them to the clipboard, and then I'm going to paste them into VS Code. And before we paste the stages, I'll want to define a pipeline block, and I'll specify agent any. And then after that, we can go ahead and paste the stages block into the pipeline block. And in the setup stage, we're going to run several shell commands to download the LambdaTest tunnel binary file, and then run the LambdaTest tunnel so that we can make a connection and then execute our tests. So we need to get the download URL of the LambdaTest tunnel, and I'm going to navigate back to LambdaTest, the LambdaTest documentation. And from the LambdaTest documentation, I'm going to scroll down to scroll to the testing locally hosted pages section. And if I select the first link here, how to connect LambdaTest tunnel for Linux, my Jenkins server is running on Linux, so I'm going to select this link. But of course, if your Jenkins server is running on Windows, you would want to select this link. And I'm going to open up this page, and if I scroll down, I have a link here to the LambdaTest tunnel binaries. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that link address, and then I'm going to open VS Code back up, and we'll invoke the shell command, and I'm going to use wget to download the LambdaTest tunnel binary file. And then in the next shell command, we're going to download a utility to unzip the LambdaTest tunnel binary file. So you only need to use this shell command on the first run of the pipeline, and then you can remove it for future runs. But I'm going to go ahead and apt-get install zip unzip. And once that is installed, I'm going to invoke it to unzip the LambdaTest tunnel zip file. Okay. .zip. And once we unzip the tunnel binary file, we can go ahead and invoke the program. So I'll go ahead and do so. And we have to pass in as parameters the username, the LambdaTest username, and we're going to use environment variables for the username and access key, just to as a best practice. So I'm going to call it LT_username, and then -- key for the key parameter, and we'll also reference this as an environment variable. So this is going to be LT_access_key. And then we'll also give this tunnel a name. So tunnel name is going to be Jenkins-tunnel. And finally, we'll also set the parameter info API port running on port 8000. And one last thing is we are going to run this program as a in the background. So I'm going to add ampersand and close off that shell command. Now these environment variables haven't been created yet, so we will need to create them. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll open Jenkins back up. And if I navigate to the dashboard, and I'll select Manage Jenkins. And then I'll select Configure System. And if I scroll down to Global Properties, again, we can add additional environment variables. So I'll go ahead and select Add here. And the first one will be the LT underscore username, which is techwithmoss@gmail.com. And then the second environment variable is going to be the LambdaTest access key, okay? And this value we can pull from the LambdaTest dashboard. Actually, we can pull it from the hub URL. So this is in the hub URL, we pass in the username and access key in the URL. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the access key here, and I'll paste it in. And then I'm going to go ahead and select Save. And then let's open VS Code back up. And that's pretty much everything that we need for the setup stage. In the test stage, we'll essentially copy the same steps that we took in the job that we just created in the build section. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this comment here, and I'll invoke the shell command. And just like we did in the previous Jenkins job, we'll go ahead and sleep for 5 seconds just to allow the tunnel to make a connection. And then immediately after that, we'll invoke Python, and we'll run the workspace. We'll serve the workspace on port 8081, and we'll do so as a background process. And after that, we'll invoke our test script. So test sample to do app.py. And once the test script completes, we'll then kill the server. So I'm going to invoke sh and then pkill http.server. Okay. Once we kill the server, we'll add a small sleep statement. Okay, we'll just sleep for 10 seconds, and then we'll curl the endpoint to stop the LambdaTest tunnel. Okay, so delete, and then localhost. Port 8000, and then API v1.0 and stop. Okay. So this should work or behave essentially the same way as the Jenkins freestyle job that we previously created. Now what you'll want to do from here is copy the pipeline script, and then in GitHub, create a new Jenkins file in the root directory of the repository. Now I've already created a Jenkins file, so I'll just go ahead and open it up, and I'll select edit, and I'll go ahead and paste the pipeline script into the file. Okay, I'll go ahead and commit those changes. And then let's navigate back to the pipeline configuration page. And I'm going to click Save. And then let's see if this builds successfully. So I'm going to click Build Now. And it looks like it failed pretty quickly. So let me go ahead and open up the console output. And it looks like I was missing an end quote there. So I'm going to open up GitHub. And let's close off that end quote. Okay, and then let's go back to Jenkins and we'll build again, and let's see if we have any errors. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the console output, and let's take a look at what's going on. So it downloaded the LambdaTest tunnel successfully. We can see that here. And then we also install the zip unzip package, which in my case has already been installed. And then after that package has been installed, we unzip the LambdaTest tunnel. And once we unzip the tunnel, we then invoke it with the parameters that we had previously, that we set previously in the pipeline. And we sleep for 5 seconds, invoke the Python server, and then we invoked the test script, but it looks like it failed here. So we should probably take a look at why it failed. So it says build name should be of type string. So let's take a look at why that didn't accept our build name. So let's take a look at the test script in the code base and see if we can troubleshoot what's going on. Okay. And it failed at line 18, but I think I know what the issue is here, because the build name in the capabilities is still using the environment variable LT build name, which, since we're using the pipeline job, that environment variable isn't defined. So if I navigate back to the pipeline script, we can actually define that variable within the pipeline script. So if I edit the pipeline script and then below agent any, I'll invoke the environment block. And inside of the environment block, I'll define LT underscore build underscore name, and then we'll say it's equal to the name of the pipeline job, which is LambdaTest -pipeline. Okay, and then we'll close off that environment block. And let's see if that fixes the issue. Okay, and I'll navigate back to Jenkins, and let's run the build again and see if we can get it passing this time. Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up, and let's navigate. Okay, it looks like it's running the test script successfully. Okay, so the test script ran without any errors, and we killed the HTTP server. It's sleeping for 10 seconds, and then it should close the LambdaTest tunnel, which it looks like it did successfully. And let's take a look at the test results in the LambdaTest dashboard as well. So I'll open up LambdaTest, and I'm inside of the automation tab. And then you can see at the top of the list here, the LambdaTest -pipeline, which completed. So I'll go ahead and open this up, and it says that the test pass. And if I take a look at the video as well, you can see that the test ran the same as they did in the freestyle job. So those are the two ways that you can integrate Jenkins with the LambdaTest platform. You can utilize the LambdaTest Jenkins plugin within a freestyle Jenkins job, but you can also run the LambdaTest tunnel within a Jenkins pipeline job in the event that your release process uses a Jenkins pipeline. I hope you enjoyed this video and the other videos in this series, and thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more, be sure to follow our blog at lambdatest.com/blog, as well as our LambdaTest community at community.lambdatest.com. You can also earn resume-worthy LambdaTest Selenium certifications at lambdatest.com/certifications.